Hello, everybody. It's Alistair Lockhart here from French Entree, and it's time for another update on the French property market. Um, as I film this, it's the beginning of November. The UK is about to go into its second lockdown as the second wave of COVID marches across Europe. International travel is pretty much stymied, particularly if you're from the US. You're not allowed into Europe. And if you're from somewhere like Australia, it's impossible to get a flight over to France. So we have a lot of frustrated, stuck property buyers who are doing their research from afar. And obviously, from the UK perspective, after the frenzy of the summer, after the first lockdown, and then sort of all those people who wanted to emigrate to France and benefit from EU citizen status before Brexit. Obviously, the threat of a no deal is still there as we head on the downslope towards Christmas. Will there be another extension of the transition period because COVID has slowed everything down? Who knows? Certainly, all of those people, British buyers who wanted to emigrate to France, who didn't find their property, are now frantically looking for somewhere to rent in order to get an attestation so that they can demonstrate residency before the end of the year. And for others, they're perhaps waiting it out, seeing what happens over winter, seeing what happens in the spring. So yeah, it could not be a stranger time with regards to the French property market. So we thought it would be useful, really, just to sort of quickly go through the things that you can do. So you can't physically get to the country, but what can you do? And at one end of the extreme, we do have a number of agents who are selling properties remotely, which is great. If you're not able to get to France and you're perhaps buying at the lower end of the market, perhaps where there's less of an investment, if you're buying something straightforward like an apartment or a holiday home, and you've got a switched on estate agent who can give you a virtual tour and do FaceTime or WhatsApp or a Zoom call and show you around the inside of the house and the outside of the house, and you get to ask all of your questions. You can give power of attorney to the notaire, and actually you can completely transact the property from afar. I wouldn't say that it's the most commonplace way to buy a property, but it certainly is happening. I can think of a couple of agents where they're doing a number of sales that way. Obviously, the more complicated the purchase, the higher the budget. If you're buying something which is requiring works, if you're looking to buy something that you want to turn into a business potentially or has lots of land, that would be tricky to buy remotely. But certainly at the sort of apartment, villa, holiday home end, you can theoretically buy your property without leaving your armchair, which is amazing and extraordinary, but it is possible. If you're not ready to do that, then you can obviously do a lot of your research online. You can do your desk research. There's plenty of articles on French Entree, hundreds of articles on French Entree, not just about the process of buying a property, but all of the other ancillary stuff that comes with it. There's lots of articles and content around regions. Many of you I know won't necessarily have settled yet on where you want to be in France, and you may not settle on it until you're physically here on the ground, but you can certainly do your research in terms of reading up, buying books, watching YouTube videos, joining Facebook groups, pecking brains of people who live there already, and start to get a sense of things like, what are the major tourist attractions? What's the infrastructure like? Where are the nearest airports? In the current climate, where are the nearest train stations and TGV access, as well as that sort of macro view of what's the weather like? Will it have proper seasons? Will it feel like Spain? Will it feel like Britain? Will I get snow? What's the peak temperature in the summer? All of that you can really do from your home, from wherever you are in the world, so that when you do manage to get to France, you can use your time, much more efficiently and much more profitably, and you're not spending weeks, months running around France. You've actually done a degree of research before you get here. You can also start to build relationships remotely with estate agents. Through ourselves, we work with a network of partners right across France, and it's obviously harder if you're not planning on coming over for some time, but you can certainly start to build a relationship with agents in the area where you think you're likely to buy, and start to get a sense of the prices. How far does your money stretch? Is it going to get you that pool that you want, or might it buy you a property with enough garden to put in a pool? And if that's the case, then how much does a pool cost? If you're buying a property that requires work, how much does it cost to buy a holiday home which has all of the sanitation and all the electricity's up to scratch and the roof's good and all of that stuff? An estate agent, who knows the local area, will be able to guide you on those things. And obviously you can get a sense of property prices just from surfing the web. French Entree, we've got something like 6,000 properties on our site. That will certainly give you an idea, in most parts of France, how much you can get for your money. Beyond the actual property purchase, there's definitely other things that you can do in terms of laying the groundwork for your purchase. So, let's think about finance. Will you be a cash buyer, or will you be potentially either needing to or interested in finding out about a mortgage in euros in France? Very long term, very low rates. It's not the easiest thing, I would say, to get a mortgage in France. The lenders are pretty scrupulous and pretty forensic. They've got a very strict income to debt ratio that they work on. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So we can introduce you to one of our brokers or one of our lenders, and just start that conversation about would I be eligible for a mortgage in France, and if I was eligible, what can I potentially borrow? And then that might start to shape the type of property that you go on to look for. Conversely, if you're not eligible, then at least you know where you stand, and you're going to have to find a different way of financing the property. Another really important thing to think about early on is foreign exchange, making sure that you understand the mechanics of how you buy your euros when it comes to sending over your deposit, your 10% deposit, or when it comes to sending over the balance. Whether you're selling your sterling or dollars or Australian dollars or whatever currency, how do you make sure that you are maximizing that transaction and getting the most euros for your money? And again, we work in partnership with Moneycorp, very long-standing partnership. They've always very successfully got excellent rates for our French property buyers. So again, ask for an introduction. We can put you in touch with Moneycorp, have those initial conversations so that you can understand what are the options open to me when the time comes. And then it's one less thing to think about when, you're over in France and you fall in love with a property. You've done all of that preparation and that groundwork. If you go a step further, you can also think about the legalities of buying a property. Obviously, the notaire or notaires in France will be handling the conveyancing, but you may want to take advantage of independent legal advice. It may be that the property that you're buying, or what you're thinking of buying, your project, might be particularly complicated, and it might require a bit more thought. In which case, you may want the reassurance of having a qualified solicitor, bilingual solicitor, hold your hand throughout the process. And the other very important thing to think about, of course, is succession. Succession and inheritance laws work very differently in France, and so it again, it's definitely worth taking advice early to establish whether you are in a slightly complicated position. We find that buyers where there are second marriages, children from previous marriages, that can get a bit tricky, and you do need to understand how that works. So again, do the groundwork, understand that before you get anywhere near putting in an offer on a property, so that you don't inadvertently come across any potholes or bear traps, or choose your analogy during the purchase process. You can also, do some fairly mundane things like, open up a bank account as a non-resident. Lots of banks will allow non-residents to open bank accounts, and for the purposes of setting up utilities and your phone line in your house, that becomes so much simpler if you've got a bank account already opened up. So, I think, it's a very strange time. There's no getting away from it, and there's no sugarcoating it. And at the beginning of November, it's likely to last for some time. That uncertainty is likely to last for some time. But hopefully, come December, beginning of 2021, many of you can get over to France and start looking at those properties. And we are here as a resource, whether you're just using it online or whether you want to get in touch and just pick our brains about something, or ask to be pointed in the right direction. We're here. We've got 20 odd years experience of French property and the French property market. So do use us as a resource during this very strange time, and hopefully, fingers crossed, there are brighter times on the horizon, and in 2021 you'll be able to find the property of your dreams. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.